David thought his marriage was safe, predictable, maybe even boring, but safe. Until one evening his wife suggested something wildly out of character, a visit to a nude beach. He thought she was just chasing excitement. What she was really chasing was someone else. David Parker never thought his life would come undone on a Wednesday evening. It started like any other. He was slouched on the couch in his small Portland apartment, half watching a game show and mindlessly flipping through channels. His wife Amanda clinked around in the kitchen, the usual background noise. Comfortable silence, routine. That's what their marriage had become. Predictable, quiet, and, in David's mind, safe. They weren't the type of couple who argued. They didn't throw plates or slam doors, but they also hadn't laughed together in weeks. They shared space, meals, and bills, but not much else. When Amanda walked into the room holding a glass of red wine, David barely looked up. She stopped in front of him, waiting. He glanced over and immediately noticed something different. Her posture was off, nervous but excited. The kind of energy people have before confessing something big. "Can I ask you something?" she said casually, sitting beside him. David muted the TV. "Sure." Amanda stared into her glass for a second. "What do you think about going to that nude beach? You know, the one everyone's been talking about. People say it's freeing." David blinked. "Wait, what?" He laughed, expecting her to join in. She didn't. "I'm serious. I read about it online. Couples go there to reconnect. It's not weird. It's supposed to be empowering." David sat up. Amanda, always adventurous in her 20s, had mellowed over the years. She'd become as rooted in routine as he was. This suggestion felt like it came out of nowhere. "Are you bored?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. "No," she said quickly. "I just think maybe we need something new, something bold, just once." David hesitated. The idea made him uncomfortable, but something about Amanda's tone stopped him from saying no. She wasn't joking. This wasn't a fantasy or a dare. She was asking for something real, maybe even asking for help. "If it means that much to you, okay, let's try it," he said, forcing a half smile. Amanda looked surprised, relieved almost. She leaned in, kissed him on the cheek, and went back to the kitchen. David sat there, unsure if he'd just agreed to an experiment or walked into something far more complicated. 2 days later, they drove out to the coast. The sun was bright, the wind sharp. Amanda parked the car and stepped out with an ease David couldn't mimic. As they approached the beach, he noticed the people around them. Sunbathers, couples, groups laughing loudly. None of them seemed self-conscious. David, in contrast, felt every inch of his skin tighten. Amanda kicked off her shoes and walked barefoot onto the sand, exhaling like she'd just come home. "Isn't this great?" she asked, her smile genuine. David nodded, unsure. He kept his shirt on and followed her down toward the water. Amanda laid out a towel and stretched out like she'd done this 100 times. David sat stiffly beside her, pretending to enjoy it. That's when Amanda stood up suddenly and waved. "Oh my God, Josh?" David looked up to see a tall man walking toward them, his expression relaxed, his smile wide. Amanda jogged over and hugged him. Too long, too close. David's stomach dropped. "This is Josh," Amanda said, turning back. "We went to college together." Josh extended a hand. David shook it, unsure why his grip felt so forced. There was something about the way Josh looked at Amanda, like she wasn't just a memory, like she was something unfinished. They talked for a few minutes. David stood there, invisible, while Amanda and Josh laughed about old stories and shared looks that didn't belong to strangers. When Josh finally left, Amanda was still smiling. "Wasn't that a surprise?" David didn't answer. He watched her lay back down on the towel, sunglasses on, as if nothing had just happened. But something had. He didn't know what exactly, but the air between them felt different now. Heavy, off. That night, as Amanda fell asleep beside him, David stared at the ceiling. The way Josh had looked at her, the way Amanda had lit up. It looped in his mind like a warning. He didn't say anything. Not yet. But that moment on the beach had shifted something deep inside him. He just didn't know how much. David tried to push the encounter out of his mind. Amanda said Josh was just an old friend. The hug might have been a bit much. But people get excited when they reconnect. That's all it was. That's what he told himself. But the doubts didn't leave. Over the next few days, Amanda was different. She smiled more, hummed to herself while making coffee, even started working out again. At first, David thought maybe the beach really had done something good for her. Maybe it woke her up in a way nothing else had. But soon he noticed something else. Her phone never left her side. Before, she'd leave it on the table or next to the bed. Now it was always in her hand or pocket. She'd glance at it during dinner and smile to herself. Once she even turned the screen away when he leaned over to grab the salt. He didn't say anything. Not yet. Then one night, Amanda was in the shower. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen table. David stared at it. He knew the passcode. She'd never kept it from him, but it still felt wrong. He sat frozen for a full minute, then reached for it. He unlocked it. Messages, notifications. One name at the top. Josh. David tapped. The conversation wasn't just catching up. It was emotional, personal. Lines like, "Talking to you feels like the old days again," and "I didn't realize how much I missed this." Photos, jokes, even a message that said, "Can't stop thinking about you at the beach." David closed the phone and put it back exactly where it was. He heard the water shut off and quickly returned to the couch. He felt like the floor had shifted under him. That night, Amanda curled up beside him in bed like nothing had happened. David stared at the ceiling again, but this time, he wasn't wondering. He was sure. She was emotionally cheating. The next morning, she was cheerful, offered to make pancakes, asked about his day. David went through the motions, responding with nods and short answers. Inside, he was a mess. At work, he couldn't focus. Every time his phone buzzed, his chest tightened, even when it wasn't her. Every memory of Amanda smiling recently came back with a different meaning. Her joy wasn't because of their shared experience. It was because of someone else. Still, he waited. He didn't want to explode. He didn't want a screaming match or a dramatic meltdown. He wanted the truth, plain and simple. And he wanted her to say it to his face. That night, he asked her to sit down. "Amanda," he said carefully, "I need to ask you something. I need you to be honest." She gave him a wary look. "Okay. I read your messages with Josh." Her expression fell. The shift was instant. "I wasn't looking to spy. Something felt off. I had to know." She didn't respond right away. "We were just talking," she said finally softly. "I didn't mean for it to be a big deal." "It is a big deal," David said. "You've been hiding it, and the way you talk to him, it's not just old friends. You know that." Amanda looked away. "I didn't plan for any of this," she said. "It just happened. I felt disconnected. And then Josh showed up, and I remembered a part of myself I hadn't seen in years." David clenched his jaw. "So instead of talking to me, you started flirting with your ex?" "I wasn't trying to hurt you. You just didn't care if you did." Amanda stood. "I don't want to fight." David stayed seated. "I don't either. I just want to know what this means for us. Do you want to be with him?" "No," she said too quickly. "I don't even know what I want. Everything's been so stuck." He nodded slowly. "So I was right. You're bored, and I wasn't enough." "I never said that. You didn't have to." Amanda walked into the bedroom without another word. David didn't follow. He sat in silence, heart pounding, unsure of what would happen next. The next few days were strained. They moved around each other like strangers. Amanda acted normal. Too normal. As if pretending nothing had happened could make it true. She still smiled, still laughed at her phone. But David no longer asked who she was texting. He already knew. He spent more time out of the house, driving, walking through parks, sitting in cafes without ordering anything, just thinking. One night, after hours of pacing the streets, he returned home and found Amanda on the couch, alone. She looked up. "Can we talk?" she asked. David hesitated, then sat down across from her. "I've deleted the messages," she said. "I told Josh I can't talk to him anymore." David said nothing. "I don't know if it's enough, but I wanted you to know I'm trying." He nodded. "Why did you even suggest the beach?" Amanda looked away. "I thought it would help us reconnect. I really did. But part of me knew Josh went there a lot. I guess I was hoping I'd see him. I didn't expect it to become anything. David stood up slowly. So you planned it? Not exactly, but close enough. He walked to the bedroom and started packing a bag. Amanda followed him. What are you doing? I need space. I need to think. And I can't do that here. Please don't leave like this. He turned to her. I loved you, Amanda. I still do. But you made a choice. Now I'm making mine. He closed the suitcase and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. David didn't have a plan when he left. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he couldn't stay. He drove aimlessly through Portland's empty streets, the suitcase sliding around in the back seat with every turn. The city lights blurred past his windshield, but nothing grounded him. His marriage, his home, his trust, they all felt like they were unraveling in real time. He checked into a roadside motel on the outskirts of town. It was quiet and impersonal. That's what he wanted. He turned his phone off and lay on the bed, not even bothering to unpack. The silence gave him space, but no peace. Over the next few days, David kept to himself. He called in sick at work, ignored texts from friends, and spent hours just walking through neighborhoods or sitting at the edge of a lake. He thought about Amanda constantly, but not in the way he used to. Her laugh, her routines, her favorite songs. They were all still there in his head, but now paired with a sense of betrayal that wouldn't go away. He remembered how quickly she had lit up around Josh, how natural it had looked, like something she'd missed and was relieved to find again. The pain wasn't just about the messages. It was about everything Amanda hadn't said, all the chances she had to be honest, and how instead she chose to protect her secrets. One afternoon, while walking past a park, David saw a group of college students playing music. It was messy and unpolished, but full of energy. One of them waved him over. Without thinking, he sat down, picked up a guitar, and played a few chords. His fingers were rusty, but muscle memory took over. He didn't smile, but he didn't feel numb either. It was the first time in weeks he'd felt connected to anything. That night, back at the motel, David turned his phone back on. Dozens of missed calls and messages from Amanda. Nothing dramatic, just short messages. Call me when you can. I miss you. Please talk to me. He didn't reply. A week later, he got a message from Amanda's sister. She told him Amanda had started therapy, that she wasn't seeing Josh anymore, that she wasn't trying to pull him back, just wanted to own what she did and give him space. It should have made David feel better. It didn't. He realized the damage was deeper than the betrayal. It was the erosion of trust, the way his reality had shifted in a matter of days. Amanda's apology couldn't fix that. Neither could therapy or time apart. Still, he needed closure. He texted Amanda. I'll stop by next week to pick up some paperwork. When he arrived at their apartment, Amanda was sitting at the kitchen table, a mug of tea in her hands. She stood when he walked in, then sat back down when he didn't say anything. Thanks for coming, she said quietly. David nodded. He grabbed the documents from the counter, ready to leave, but she spoke again. Please, 5 minutes, not to fix things, just to say something. He hesitated, then leaned against the doorway. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Amanda said, and I know I don't deserve anything from you. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need to say this out loud. David stayed silent. When I started talking to Josh again, it wasn't because you weren't enough. It was because I wasn't. I'd let myself disappear into routine, and instead of asking for help, I looked for escape. She paused, then continued. I know that sounds selfish. It was. I didn't stop to think about how it would affect you. I just wanted to feel something again. But I hurt the one person who never stopped showing up for me. David took a deep breath. Why didn't you just talk to me? Amanda looked up. I was afraid you'd see how far I'd slipped, that if I admitted it, you'd walk away. I walked away anyway, he said. She nodded. I don't regret that you left, she said. You were right to. I just wanted you to know. I'm trying to change. For me, not to win you back. David didn't know what he expected, but it wasn't this. Amanda wasn't crying, begging, or blaming. She looked steady, like someone who had finally started facing her own reflection. He nodded once, then said, I appreciate that. I really do. But I can't come back to something I no longer trust. I still love you, but that's not enough. Amanda nodded slowly, accepting the words. David turned to leave. As he reached the door, he looked back one last time. Take care of yourself, Amanda. You too, she said. And then he was gone. As the door closed, something final settled between them. Not anger, not regret, just clarity. For David, this was the moment he stopped waiting for things to return to how they were and started building something new from the ground up. David didn't feel relief when he left Amanda's apartment for the last time, just emptiness. But it was a different kind of emptiness, one with edges, shape, and direction. He wasn't grieving anymore. He was moving forward. Back at the motel, he finally unpacked the suitcase he'd thrown together in a rush. He folded his shirts, placed his work laptop on the desk, and hung up his dress shirts. It wasn't home, but it was his space, something he hadn't had in weeks. The next morning, he returned to work. No one asked too many questions. They assumed he'd taken a mental health break, and he didn't correct them. He kept his head down, stayed late, and poured himself into spreadsheets and reports. It was easier than thinking. But in the quiet moments, David found himself searching. Not for Amanda, not anymore. For himself. He realized how much of his identity had been tied to the marriage, not because Amanda demanded it, but because he had willingly let go of everything else. His old hobbies, his spontaneous side, even his friendships. Most of them had faded quietly over the years, replaced by routines and responsibilities. So he began rebuilding. He called up friends he hadn't seen in years. Met one for coffee, another for a weekend hike. He pulled his old guitar from storage, wiped off the dust, and started playing again every evening. His fingers were still stiff, but the music came back in pieces. He even signed up for a local art class. Just once a week, charcoal and sketching. Nothing fancy, but sitting in that room, surrounded by strangers all focused on blank pages, gave him something he hadn't felt in months. Potential. One night after class, he walked home through the city and stopped by a late-night food truck. The guy at the window greeted him like a regular, even though David had only been there once before. That small connection, a nod, a "hey man," was enough to remind him he wasn't invisible, that he was still part of something bigger. Meanwhile, Amanda was facing her own reality. At first, she'd hoped David would call, that maybe after some time, things would settle and they could have a real conversation. But the days turned into weeks, and silence remained. When it became clear he wasn't coming back, the weight of her decisions hit harder than ever. She didn't reach out again. Instead, she kept going to therapy. She started writing, not just journaling, but really putting her thoughts on paper. She wrote about the moments she ignored in the marriage, times when she felt distant but chose not to speak, days when she resented the predictability but pretended everything was fine. She wrote about Josh, not just what he meant, but what he represented. It became clear to her that Josh had never really been the problem. He was an excuse, a shortcut to distraction, a symptom of a deeper issue, her inability to face discomfort, to admit vulnerability. Alone in the apartment, Amanda also began clearing things out. Not in a symbolic, dramatic way, but because it was time. She packed up old photos, boxed David's things with care, and rearranged the living room. The space had always been theirs. Now for the first time, it was hers alone. And it felt strange, but honest. She reached out to her sister more, saw her parents, started cooking again, something she hadn't truly enjoyed in years. But none of it filled the space David had occupied. She didn't try to force it. Instead, she accepted that the absence was part of the cost. She had broken something she couldn't rebuild. The best she could do now was learn from it. Weeks passed. One evening, David got a text from an unknown number. It was from Amanda's therapist. Just a brief thank you message. Amanda had apparently given permission, wanting David to know how seriously she was taking the work. The message didn't ask for anything. No meeting, no second chance, just acknowledgement. David stared at the text for a while, then deleted it. Not out of anger, but acceptance. His life was different now. He'd moved into a small apartment downtown. Not big, not fancy, but it had light and space, and more importantly, no ghosts. He hung a cheap whiteboard on the kitchen wall where he wrote goals. Finished sketchbook. Run 3x a week. Call mom. They weren't life-changing, but they were his. He wasn't bitter. He didn't blame Amanda. That feeling had faded. In its place was something quieter, understanding. People make bad choices, some because they're selfish, others because they're lost. Amanda had been both. So had he, in his own way, lost inside a version of life that no longer fit. One Friday night, while walking through the park, David passed by another group of musicians playing near the fountain. One of them recognized him from weeks earlier and offered him the guitar again. He smiled, took it, and played a simple tune. People clapped, not many and not loudly. But it was enough. Afterwards, someone asked him if he played often. He shrugged. "I'm starting again." And he was. Not to impress anyone, not to win anyone back, just to be whole again. Months had passed since David last saw Amanda. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after their separation, but it became real in a way it hadn't been for years. Every day felt more intentional. He wasn't simply going through the motions anymore. His new apartment was smaller, but it fit him. He'd filled it with things that reflected who he was now, not just who he used to be. Sketches taped to the walls, half-written lyrics on the table, a calendar filled with things he actually looked forward to. He had routines but not ruts. Every Sunday he hiked with a friend from work. Tuesdays he played guitar at an open mic. Just one song, never more. Thursdays he called his sister in Chicago, something he hadn't done regularly in years. And sometimes he did nothing at all except sit in the park and watch the world go by. But even that felt different now, because he was present. Amanda stayed in the background of his life, not because he hated her, but because they'd both accepted the distance. There were no more texts, no unexpected emails. Their divorce was finalized quietly. No drama, no courtroom fight, just signatures, mailed envelopes, and a mutual understanding that the end didn't need to be louder than the beginning. David sometimes wondered what she was doing, if she was still going to therapy, if she'd gone back to teaching part-time like she used to talk about. But he didn't check. He didn't ask around. Closure, he realized, wasn't something she could give him. It wasn't a conversation or an apology. It was a decision to stop carrying the weight of someone else's mistake and start living for himself. One morning after a jog through the city, David stopped by a local cafe he'd come to like. The barista knew his name now. She even remembered how he liked his coffee. He took his cup and sat near the window. That's when he saw Amanda. She was walking across the street alone, holding a book under one arm. She looked up, paused briefly, and spotted him through the glass. Their eyes met. No wave, no smile. Just recognition. David gave a small nod. Acknowledgement, not invitation. Amanda nodded back, then kept walking. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't painful. It was peaceful. That one moment told him everything he needed to know. They had both moved forward. Their paths, once tangled, had separated, and that was okay. He sipped his coffee and opened his sketchbook. Later that evening, David played at the open mic again. This time, instead of a cover, he played something he'd written himself, a slow, reflective melody. No lyrics, just music. When he finished, the crowd clapped, and someone approached him afterward to ask if he taught lessons. He said no, but promised to think about it. On his way out, the host asked if he'd be back next week. "Yeah," David said, "I think I will." Back at home, he marked the date on his calendar. It felt like a small thing, but he'd learned that it's the small things, done with purpose, that build a meaningful life. He didn't need a dramatic ending. He didn't want revenge or redemption from anyone else. What he wanted and what he'd finally found was clarity. Amanda's betrayal had broken something, yes, but it had also forced him to confront everything he'd buried for years. The parts of himself he'd ignored, the things he let fade, the conversations he should have had. It hurt, but it also woke him up. And now, instead of fighting to fix the past, he was focused on creating a better future. Not with Amanda, not in reaction to her, just for himself.